Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the CROMA Security Solutions Group PLC investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged. They can be submitted at any time via the Q&A tab that's just situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Please just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it is appropriate to do so, and these will be available via your Investor Meet company dashboard. Before we begin, I would like to submit the following poll, which will just appear on your screens now. And I would now like to hand you over to the executive management team from CROMA Security Solutions. Roberto, Teo, good morning.
Good morning, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to the CROMA Security Solutions presentation. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Roberto Fiorentino. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the business. I've been working in the world of security for 42 years and have extensive experience of all areas of security. I'd like to also hand over to Teo now to introduce herself.
Good morning, all. My name is Teo Andreeva, and I was appointed as CFO on 31st of March this year. I've worked within the business for over 17 years, and I know it pretty much inside and out. My passion is strategy, business development. Obviously, I'm Roberto's strategic partner and exceptionally passionate about mergers and acquisitions.
Thank you, Teo. Okay, so where shall we start? Creating the British security brand. What we're doing here at CROMA is based on what I said earlier, a great deal of years of experience. And today, the opportunity that we see is in the market of locksmiths, of which there are approximately 6,500 across the country. These are made up of very small businesses, some of them sole traders, and the rest of them with no more than a handful of staff. And it's a very fragmented industry. Some towns and cities will have 2 or 3 locksmiths in them, but they're all small businesses. And for us, we see a huge market void for us to take over these locksmiths and transform them into part of the CROMA group, but elevating them into what we call security centres, where the rest of our services from our other division can be overlaid. And those services involve CCTV, intruder alarms, access control, intercom systems. So it's the bringing together of those services through these retail outlets. We have a proven track record in terms of the acquisitions we've done to date, and they have been successful. So let's talk about where we are today. We currently have 14 outlets, and they are concentrated in the south of England, where our business first started, in Southampton, where we have 3 branches, and then they spread across the south coast. And more recently, we've acquired Bury in North Manchester and Warrington, and also Coventry. And then you can see a list of the other shops that we have. In terms of the electronic security, we have a headquarters in the south, and we also have another electronic security division in Bury in Manchester, coupled with the locksmithing shop there. So this slide really is about telling you what happened last year, because in a minute we're going to move on to what's important, which is the future. But the year that we've reported recently, turnover was 42.83 million, with a high EBITDA number, which we should stress is as a result of the profit on disposal of the largest division of the group, along with its contributing profits that it made. And the disposal went through at a price of 6.5 million. And in addition to that, there were some intercompany balances that were paid. Okay, so what we're looking at here is the P&L on the continuing operations compared to what they were last year. So in both instances, stripping out the largest division, which was the guarding division. And what we can see encouragingly is an increase in turnover of 38%, an improvement in gross margin through consolidation and rebates that we obtain from our suppliers on our spends. So when we acquire a new business, it becomes a benefit to us because we're buying at better rates. EBITDA moved significantly from 0.55 to 0.95, and we finished the year in a higher net cash position. Now, if we move on to the next slide, we break down into the locksmiths division and the fire and security division, and we can see again the increase. And it's very important to note that we had organic growth of 21%. So of that 38% on the previous slide that I mentioned, 21% of it was organic, and the rest of it was through the acquisitions made in the year, which we'll talk about later. If we can move on to the next slide. So the operational highlights really for the year was the disposal of Vigilant, the biggest part of the business, an unusual thing, but really non-core for what we're trying to do, and a great deal of turnover for less margin and also at a higher risk than we're able to generate through our core businesses. We introduced a new board. We had Joe Haig join us and Steve Naylor, and they were appointed in the year. And as Theo mentioned earlier, she was appointed as the CFO earlier this year. The acquisitions that we made in the year were Southern Stronghold Limited and Safe Cell Security Group, and they added 3 retail outlets to our 14, making us 14 from 11. One of those businesses was an electronic security business, the Safe Cell Security Group, and it also had a locksmith within it. So in terms of the sale of Vigilant, we have achieved what I mentioned earlier, 6.5 million in sale, and 1.07 was brought in intercompany loans. The consideration is satisfied as detailed below. So 1.073 was paid in cash on completion, along with some shares that were settled by the leaving directors. And we have just over 4 million issued in loan notes that will be repayable over the coming months, starting in March this year. And 1.3 was paid on completion by the issue of redeemable shares. So this is what we're really all here for today. It's the opportunity ahead, and I hope I will be able to add some colour to that now and explain what we see as the future for CROMA. Very interestingly, being so close and living and breathing this business and understanding what's going on, we see the market very clearly defined into 2 areas, locksmiths, and then there are fire and security companies. Locksmiths typically are doing key cutting, they're selling locks, master key systems, safes, all the physical aspects of security, whereas a fire and security systems company is involved in life safety systems, CCTV, access control, intruder alarms, etc. And they are very, very different businesses. The opportunity for us is taking the locksmiths businesses, which are available at very good value because there are no other people in the market out there wanting to acquire them. And because they're small businesses, they're not likely to want to go around acquiring each other, something that we have already done to the scale of 14. And of course, we have ambitions to take that much, much further. The fire and security systems businesses, they are semi-active in the mergers and acquisitions market, and they tend to sell for much higher multiples, whereas locksmiths without a ready market are available at much lower rates. And that really is where we see our opportunity in taking those businesses and shaping the future of the security market by turning them into complete security services available from, I call it retail stores. Some of them are on industrial estates, but the rest are on secondary and tertiary shopping areas. And it really does give our customers, be they retail or trade, a feeling of security because they're dealing with a face rather than somebody on the internet. And that is our plan in terms of how we're going to expand our business. So let's think about how do we make good decisions when we acquire, and what are the characteristics that we seek out when we acquire these locksmith businesses. And if we start at the top left of the slide, we'll notice that they're family-owned businesses and they're looking for an exit strategy or a succession plan. Most of them don't have sufficient staff that are in a position to take over those businesses, and they've been carrying on, plodding on, shall we say, with their businesses. And they operate from a mix of freehold and leasehold premises. And those are the businesses we seek out. They are generally, we're generally focusing on stores with an established and trusted reputation. So these are local locksmiths in each city and town that have been around for many, many years, and they are trusted for supplying services within those areas. They will be made up of experienced master locksmiths, and they do offer an advanced range of products and services over and above a typical key cutting store. So they will be providing what I mentioned earlier, safes, master key systems, etc. The turnover of these businesses, whilst they will be typically operating from a single store, there are a handful with 2 stores and the odd one with 3 stores, so very, very small. And each store may have a revenue between £300,000 and £500,000. There are exceptions. Of course, there are those that are much larger, with over £1 million of turnover, but that tends to be where the locksmith market sits. I mentioned earlier that there's a mix of retail. So when we look at these businesses and study them, we want to make solid decisions in the same way as we have already done to ensure that they don't just add value, but of course we have a very high probability that they will fit in and succeed. And we look at their client base for a mix of retail and tradesmen and commercial clients. And many of these businesses will have large master key systems within the local community in schools and colleges and hospitals. And in the case of Coventry, that we took over last year, of course, they have the Cadbury's factory, they have the Jaguar Motor Company. And once those thousands of locks are installed, the client is constantly tied in to have to come back for extensions, expansion to the system, and of course, the traditional key cutting. And the other interesting thing that we notice, because they're small businesses, is that they tend to have traditional procurement, sales, and accounting structures, which means they aren't very advanced. And that gives us an opportunity, which I will explain to you in a later slide, as to how we can turn that into value for CROMA. So this is where we talk about the CROMA effect. What are we doing when we buy these businesses? The first thing, of course, is centralized group services that none of these businesses can benefit from as the tiny businesses that they are today. So we have central ordering and procurement systems that guarantee best prices. We have negotiated rates with the principal suppliers to the industry on very, very good terms that also bring us rebates on our annual spend, and that is ever improving. Of course, the other areas that these small businesses benefit from is to have central accountancy services, HR, IT, communications, and vehicle purchasing, all of which we handle from head office and tend to be big areas of distraction for those small tradesmen when they're trying to just run their business and do what they're good at, which is their locksmithing services. The other big thing that CROMA have done is using our in-house staff. We've written our own software systems, and it is our own IP, and it's important to point that out. We've written this software and it is bespoke to the locksmithing industry. And what it does is it removes layers of administration and accounting from those shop owners with electronic tills, smart tills, if you like, that place orders with our suppliers. But more importantly, they process all the trade clients, including the retail clients, from one central interface, and it controls the stock systems. And one of the important things to know about the stock system is every single shop is capable of looking up stock across all the branches and those are efficiencies that we're driving through at the moment to ensure that they don't order things that they can have shipped from other branches. And the retail environment, of course, that we're changing in these shops is trying to take them from dusty old locksmith shops and smarten them up. And there is a bit of a mix here. Some of our shops need to stay looking in a traditional fashion, but definitely need a clean and a tidy. But they all benefit from these clear, intuitive displays that we can put in that sell the other services of intruder CCTV and access control. We call those the silent salesman. And when people are standing there waiting for keys to be cut, it's astonishing to watch how many of them read the boards in the shops and then inquire and say, didn't realize you did intruder alarms, could I please have a quotation? So far we've got 10 acquisitions behind us, and so we're fairly up to speed with the processes that are required in assessing those businesses and ensuring that we are only taking on board of those 6,500, the ones that we think are going to make a go of it and work for CROMA. So the track record and trading performance, which you've seen on the earlier slides for 2023, shows the clear growth path that we can achieve with acquiring these locksmiths, and of course the ever increasing added value of the consolidation of our central services across that portfolio of retail outlets. In terms of the return on investment, it is achieved not only by maintaining those clients that they have, but expanding them further into other services and the savings that we've talked about already in the consolidation. In terms of clients moving to using one local security centre and using a greater number of centres, well, this is something we discovered with our trade clients, and we have a member of staff who is dedicated to going around and seeing the trade customers. And what we've noticed is that they may be using one branch, but it could be somebody like Mighty, a big FM company. And having spoken to them, they had no idea that we had a chain of stores, and they've started using them. And we've seen sales rise, and that 21% organic growth that we talked about earlier has been achieved in a great part as a result of encouraging those clients to go to other branches or to tell staff within those organizations that work in different districts that they can go to CROMA and pick up those parts, and we are their trusted partner for that service. The other thing, of course, we do is regular visits with our branch managers, and we are continuing to encourage them with sales targets and being, if you like, conscious and effective with their stock control, only ordering what they absolutely need to do, making sure that they can buy goods from within the group from other branches before they go looking elsewhere. And again, what we've noticed is across the country, there are idiosyncrasies about certain product lines that sell better in some areas than others, and it's useful for getting rid of stock that we don't want hanging around. Obviously, there's the economies of scale, and there's the application of our expertise through the technologies and central services that add value to what we are doing here. So I think if we talk about the investment summary in CROMA today, well, the headline, of course, was the divestment of Vigilant, and that has really set us up and put us in a strong cash position with more cash still to collect to support our ambitions to grow this group. We've got robust growth. Again, I refer back to the 21% organic growth that we've seen within the existing portfolio. And the opportunity that we really do believe in is creating a nationwide network, delivering revenue and cost synergies. Of course, we start very excited this year with a new board, with a new energy to drive forward our strategy that we've come up with. And the gap in the market, which let's not suggest we're smart, we've only noticed it because, of course, we live and breathe this industry, and therefore we can see exactly who is the right target acquisition for CROMA to make added, or to give us, I should say, added value. And finally, the strong cash position leaves us well placed, as I said earlier, to capitalize on this opportunity ahead. I'd like to say thank you very much for taking the time out to listen to the CROMA story, and I'm sure we're going to have some questions in a minute, but that is the end of the presentation as it is today, and I will hand back over before we perhaps take some questions. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Roberto, Teo, thank you very much indeed for your presentation this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just by using the Q&A tab that's situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. But just while the team take a few moments to review those questions that were submitted already, I would like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. Teo, Roberto, we obviously did receive a number of pre-submitted questions ahead of today's event, and as you can see there in the Q&A tab, we've also received a number of questions throughout your presentation this morning. So
Yes.
firstly, thank you to all of those on the call for taking the time to submit their questions. And Roberto, Teo, if I may just hand back to you just to read out those questions and give your responses where it's appropriate to do so, and then I'll pick up from you at the end. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, if we look at the first question, we have a question here that asks, in an interview a few years back, Roberto stated that a company would need to have a turnover of at least 35 million to be viable, to be a viable amount to remain on the AIM market. CROMA achieved this whilst Vigilant were part of the group business. How and when does he expect to achieve and exceed this figure in the near future? So, interesting question. The answer to that is really quite straightforward and quite simple. 35 million of our turnover last year was in guarding with over 1,000 officers, and I mentioned earlier the high risk nature of that business. And when that statement was made, we were talking about the group having its three clear divisions of locksmithing, electronic security, and guarding. Guarding is turning over a high level, but producing less EBITDA contribution to the group, and therefore a high risk for that number of employees to be making that contribution. I'm very confident that at much lower levels of turnover, although of course we expect to grow our business to those levels and more in the future, but in the short term, we will be returning profits to the business that will be far more beneficial than they would be combining that heavy turnover. So I think really it's a very different business is the point to take into consideration here, and how we are looking at it now. And I think we will drive greater value for our shareholders with our strategy that we have now adopted. The next question that I can see is a lot of investment appears to have been put into Fast Vein. Is this no longer a viable project? The answer to that question is, over the past years, it was a technology of the time. Yes, we invested a lot into it. I do not see it playing a role in the future other than supporting the existing systems that we have there in the marketplace, in a number of established education sector, in fact, is where it's mainly used. And we do still have the odd inquiry, but I do not see that as part of the strategy going forwards, other than a contributory factor to our turnover and profits. The next question I can see here is, when do you receive the remaining proceeds from the Vigilant divestment? Those are, can I ask you to, yes, I'll let Teo answer that question. Thank you, Teo.
Okay, I can see we've got another question, very, very similar. I'm just going to find it. From Nick, please, can you detail the repayment timetable for the loans due from the sale of Vigilant? And now we've got 10 repayments, 10 quarterly repayments starting in March 24. These are on the loan notes and on the value between 400 and 500,000. And we also have the repayment of the redeemable shares in 3 months after the first one. So that will be June, July 2024.
That's yeah, no, that's correct, yes. The next question is,
We've answered this one.
Yes, we've done that one. What is the target?
Return on investment. Shall I just answer this one?
Yes, please.
What is the target return on investment? We have done the work on the last 2 acquisitions during the year, and they've returned 15%, which we've got full data for 12 months on the first acquisition, Southern Stronghold. And I have worked pro rata on the Seychelles group, and both returned 15%. As a target, it would be nice to achieve anything over 10%. And looking at the track record, we are achieving beyond that.
Yes, absolutely. So the next question is, who are the main competitors for acquiring family locksmiths? Very good question. I think I answered it in the presentation, that there is no one actively working in this market acquiring locksmiths, and that is fundamentally because they are, as I said earlier, very small businesses. They don't have the appetite to make acquisitions, and we just don't see locksmith businesses being sold and bought in the market, and other than the ones that we're getting involved with right now. So I don't think we have any competition in what we are doing at this moment in time. And even if we had another locksmith able to do so, they're not doing the overlay of the electronic security and joining the services together. Most of our clients, and those of you that are listening today won't know this, but most electronic security companies subcontract locksmiths in when they have to fit access control. Access control are those systems that you have in offices where you use a swipe reader or a card reader, but always there's an electronic lock in the door, generally fitted by a locksmith, and the fire and security business do the electronic side of that. And then you have the converse in the locksmiths, that they can do the locks. Some of them dabble in some access control, but not very successfully. That is what CROMA does do successfully. Moving on to the next question.
Can you please comment on the risks around receiving?
Okay, so we have a question from Mark. Can you please comment on the risks around receiving, as expected, the future deferred payments from the disposal of the guarding business? Is that something you want to answer? Are you happy for me to answer that?
You can answer it. Okay, just
Yeah, I think it's fairly straightforward. We have, as part of the SPA at the time when we disposed of Vigilant, we reserved a board member on the board. We have monthly reports on their performance going forwards. Clearly, we have no control unless, of course, there is a default, and then we have full step-in rights to the business. So I think we've taken, as one would expect, all of the necessary steps through our solicitors, shoesmiths at the time, to ensure as much as possible that we are likely to receive all payments in due course. Now, also another question from Mark: what other competing offers did you receive for Vigilant, and why did you not accept the offer from the ex-directors?
Why did you accept?
Oh, sorry, why did you? There seems to be some skepticism around the related party transaction, which has impacted CROMA's valuation. I don't think it's impacted our valuation. We sought several partners at the time and actively did market the business, and were close with another organization with a view for them taking it over. One of the factors that was the deciding was that the management team actually paid a higher level than was the other offers that we saw. And the fundamental point is, of course, that the business was heavily reliant on one of those two directors that held the relationships with a number of their larger clients. Some of those were £5 million annual contracts, and a handful of them that make up their 35 million turnover. And it was thought that that business, for it to survive, was going to be a lot stronger remaining in his hands than selling it on to somebody else. Next question from Marcin: when we look at the admin expenses at segment level, they went up some 55% for each segment. Could you elaborate on what contributed to the most, besides growing the business, and how will you go about containing these costs going forwards? In terms of the expenses for last year, there were a number of extraordinary expenses that are potentially mentioned in the accounts very briefly. But of course, we had much higher costs as well as a lot of distraction because we spent 16 to 18 months on working on the disposal of that division. So there are some costs that we don't see to be reoccurring, and if those of you have looked at the central costs, you'll see that in 22 down to 23 that our central costs have actually gone down, and that is as a result of only having half a year of cost from those directors that were on the board at the time, and we expect to be operating at similar levels to this year going forwards, so we will see the benefit of that to come. Next question from Mark. Why is your broker WH Ireland not currently making a forecast for the company? That's a very, very good question, Mark. And in the past, whilst I was the CEO of the group, one of the other directors was the City Interface, the executive chairman at the time, who's no longer here. And he was reluctant always to put those numbers into the market. And I rather suspect it's because it's very difficult to work with a guarding business where a £5 million order may or may not come in and one may terminate. So it made it very difficult to forecast. I am firmly committed to putting those numbers into the market, and WH Ireland are working with me, and you may have seen a release from their chap Nick Spolier, who is working with me to come up with releasing numbers to the market going forwards, which I'm fully committed to doing. Next question, I can't quite read it from here. How confident are you that the loan notes, we've done that?
This one. Have you thought about creating franchise stores?
That's a very interesting question again, because have we thought about creating franchise stores? I think that's something for the future. Back in the 90s, I did, and went a long way down the process of doing so, thinking that that was the answer. But I think our strategy at the moment is not to go down the franchise route. That's not to say that we wouldn't revisit that at some point in the future, once we've gained adequate and more momentum in the acquisitions of locksmiths, which we have many in the pipeline as we sit here today.
Peter, where can I see the loan notes and the redeemable share on your balance sheet? Peter, this is recorded as a receivable on the balance sheet.
In the current year and future as well.
Yes, we've got up to June.
Yes, absolutely. Next question that we can see here.
Nick.
So Nick B, the company has bought in its shares twice this year. Was this accretive to earnings per share? And what is the breakdown, the break-even share price for this? We already had treasury shares from a deal we did back in 2017 when we bought back the shares from a Mr. Wettingsteel when he exited the business. We further took back the shares as part settlement of the sale of Vigilant, which amounted to approximately 375,000 shares, which were also placed into treasury, and they were transacted at 47.5 pence, if I recollect. We later did not see much movement in the price, and an opportunity arose for us to buy back, and we bought back 400,000 shares at 45 pence. And our plans for those treasury shares obviously sit with our future acquisitions, because we are working on a couple where paper will be part of the consideration. In answer to the break-even value on the shares, by the way, they are sitting at below 45p in treasury. Are you looking to expand further north than Manchester? So Nick B again. We've been asked this question many times, and the answer is very obvious, I'm afraid to say. We'd love to open up in Edinburgh, in Glasgow, in Aberdeen, and in all cities around the country longer term. But we are driven by the opportunities that are ready to exit and the conditions of those businesses meeting our strict guidelines for us to consider acquiring them, going back to the basis of them being successful. Yes is the answer. We do want to go further north, and it will be at a time and place when there is a business that fits the criteria that we've set. How important is the iLock product to the business now and in the future? iLock is a fascinating product, comes from Scandinavia. They are growing globally, I should say, across the world now, with a very specialist product that has removed the need for cables and batteries because it enhances the power out of the back of a phone through the near field communications chip, and it powers the lock over a 2-3 millimeter air gap to energize it. And the lock tells the phone its name, the phone decides whether you have the rights to open it, and then it releases it. It is a product that sits between master key locking and full-blown access control, but it makes it very, very much more simple to operate. And the price of the product sits in between the two. I think it's a new innovation. It's going to take time for people to get their heads around not having to carry a key, but we are slowly seeing people get their heads around this, and we have a client with well over 1,000 of these on student-let properties, and it allows them to manage keys because they're not physical keys, they are virtual keys held in their telephones that can be switched on and off from a central computer at any given point in time. So as a student vacates, their key automatically is deleted, and a new tenant coming in is activated via their telephone number. So I see it as an important part of the future of locksmithing, not just for the UK, but globally. So the answer to the question is, I think it's an important, whilst not a major part of the business today, it is likely to become an important factor for these managed properties where key control is essential. How big is the pipeline of potential acquisitions? How do you source the potential targets? We are starting to see, and have done, people contacting us directly saying, we understand you might be interested in locksmiths. We certainly have dozens on the table, and it would be unfair to suggest all of those are going to complete for the very reasons I gave earlier, that they will not meet the criteria. But there are a lot of them around. We won't have a shortage of finding them. I think it's going to be down to us to make sure that we do what we said earlier, and that is to acquire the ones that are definitely going to add value and make sense. To finish off that question slightly, there was at the end of the question, you mentioned how do we source? We have put adverts out to the locksmithing trade through trade publications. We are also contacting internally, and we do this in-house. We literally trawl through companies' house and the internet to find which locksmiths are in which areas, and then we have a look at the age of the directors, and we literally put a call into them to talk to them about how the industry is going, and that's really where the starting point is. So that is how we source potential targets. Mark W again, is it difficult to find good staff? Do you place CROMA corporate staff in
acquired businesses?
Do you place CROMA? Right. When we look at these acquisition targets, it's no good us acquiring somebody that just wants to retire and they are the only brain in the business. Per se, or knowledgeable in the industry. They have to be businesses that have staff that have the ability to continue and to operate with the CROMA support. We do not place CROMA staff in those businesses. If they are successful and have been running those services locally, there is absolutely no reason why they will not do so going forwards, especially after we overlay all of our intelligence and software systems that assist them to operate that business. And it also, the manager across all those branches has a constant social media platform upon which all those managers talk to each other. And what we have seen is managers in certain stores coming across something they've never seen before, putting it onto this social media platform, and within minutes, other members of the staff are contributing, saying, we know what that is, they went out of production 5 years ago, we have 3 in stock, do you need them? And again, this is where we start to see the effect of building the numbers of these stores. What's the next question, please, Theo? How many locksmiths do you think you can source per year, and do you have a number in mind for what your final number of security centres may be? No, we don't have a final number. That would be folly to suggest we do. I've lost that question, it's disappeared.
It's this one.
Okay.
Number 23.
Centres. How many do we think we can source in a year? We are getting faster at this with templates with our solicitors for SPAs. Each deal is unique for a number of reasons, may have a freehold, may be leasehold, may have large stock, may not, different level of staff. But certainly I can see us doing several a year without too much struggle. And some of those businesses may well be at a larger size than the sort of targets that we've talked about. And I can see us certainly doing 5, 6 without too, quite comfortably. Next question, CROMA shares seem absurdly cheap. Thank you for that. Given the deferred cash to be received and the current level of EBITDA, even taking into account the soggy market for smaller companies, any thoughts here? Do you feel vulnerable to a hostile bid? No, we don't feel vulnerable to a hostile bid at all. Yes, your observation is correct in terms of the pricing that we see. Interestingly, Theo and I attended a meeting in London of when the government announced results of a survey that they carried out in the AIM market. And I have to say that it was all rather doom and gloom. And we came away thinking that even when we put our good news out, we'll be lucky to go up by a penny, because the general consensus was that nothing was moving. And if you had anything slightly negative to say, then you were at risk of collapsing your share price. So we're positively encouraged from what we've seen. It's pretty clear with a balance sheet at 15.121 million that our market cap is low. But slowly, I have no reason to think that we're not going to see that grow sharply as a result of what we've been doing and what we are publishing. And of course, we're only a few months away of publishing the next 6 months' numbers. And I think we're going to have encouraging news going forwards for everyone to read when they see what we've been up to. The next question says, can you please outline your future dividend policy? Well, that's an easy one to answer. We've had a progressive dividend policy which has been running for a number of years. I have no immediate plans, or the board has no immediate plans to change that. And I think we'll stay where we are.
Yeah, I just want to chip in. Mark, I guess your question is on, are we considering special dividend at some point? I think we've got a pipeline of good investment opportunities, and that's why this year we're sticking to our dividend policy. If we get to a point where we don't have any good target acquisitions to make, we will certainly consider a special dividend at that point.
Yes, thank you. Marcin, thank you again. It says, when you aim for 10% ROI on acquisition, does it include a margin for some errors, and how does it account for the inevitability of some acquisitions failing in the future? Lastly, is it pre-tax return or after tax?
Let me answer the last one, because we have calculated after tax, after the corporation tax increase, so it's after tax. And I think you can answer the first one on the error.
Yes, in terms of errors, because we are security people at heart and very, very cautious, let's not say we can't make an error. We've done very well with what we've done to date, and that is because of the thoroughness with which we address all of the target acquisitions before we proceed. The interesting thing to note is that because they are small additions each time, there isn't a single acquisition that is likely to be able to cause huge damage to the business if we have made a mistake. If we were going to make a £10 million or a £20 million acquisition, and I'm not suggesting that couldn't happen, then I think we would be exposed to far greater levels of risk. But at £500 to £1 million acquisition turnovers, then their contribution, and if we're paying for those businesses, I can't see a single one of them causing significant damage to our business. Now, is that the final question? I'd like to say thank you for all the questions. There is clearly a lot more to this, and as a board, we are always available and interested in engaging with individuals about what we're doing as a business. I think today, I hope we've summed up and explained where we see the opportunity for our business moving forwards. So I'd like to say thank you very much, all of you that have attended, that have listened to this, and I will hand back over. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Perfect. Roberto, Teo, thank you very much indeed for being so generous of your time then, addressing all of those questions that came in from investors. And of course, if there are any further questions that do come through, we'll make these available to you immediately after the presentation has ended, just for you to review, to then add any additional responses, of course, where it's appropriate to do so. And we'll publish all those responses out on the platform. But if I may now, guys, what I'll do is I'll redirect those on the call for their feedback, which I know is particularly important to yourselves and the company. So if I may, could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the management team can really better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of CROMA Security Solutions Group PLC, we would like to thank you for attending today's presentation. That now concludes today's session, so good afternoon to you all.
Thank you.